Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Untitled Reviews. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are dramas. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Family Law Season 2, Episode 5, A great episode. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. There's not a lot of fun to this episode. This episode's really tense and serious. It's just kind of like a lot of ooh. If you were watching a sitcom, this would be one of those ooh moments. It's just Jesus. It's kind of a pretty heavy episode. I mean, to be fair, the show is never strayed away from the drama. And yes, there are comedic moments to it, but feels like a pretty heavy episode all around, because obviously things between Abby and Frank are getting worse, because now Frank's upset. It's right, he made a point last episode. You're hiring Cordelia. She is the flamethrower. She will torch me. And it's right, the money we're going to be spending on lawyers. We could have handled this a certain way, but Abby was no, you were dragging your feet. You were never going to budge on certain things. And for Abby, after her conversation with Cordelia last episode, it's right, I have to break free of, because both of us are kind of dragging our heels on this. Neither one of us wants to kind of see it for what it is. We gotta go our separate ways, because it's better for everyone. It's better for us. But Frank goes in on her because she calls him a drama queen, that he's acting such a way, because he's right, kind of painting a picture of all the money we're going to spend is going to take away from the kids' college fund. It's kind of well, aren't you being a little dramatic? And he's why are you being a bitch? Just then Nico and Sophia walk by, and it's just jeez. And the sad thing is, Abby internalizes that so much, because she's I'm literally playing out my mom and my dad's situation, and it's I never wanted to be them, but look at what's happening here. I'm exactly them. And it's trying as I might now, she in that situation, I might as well have been my mom, and Frank might as well have been Harry, and I walked into those type of screaming matches. And that's that sad thing of that sad pattern you find yourself in, where you promise yourself you were never going to be like your parent or parents, because she wanted to be there in her children's life. And now when you get to know her mom a little bit more, her mom, JoJo, she's fun and everything, but you also see some of the issues that Abby has. Granted, we never got the full scope of, we're getting a tiny window into their relationship. And it's just it's really, because JoJo's the one that really pushed her to, go on a date. I was even thinking this when I watched it. I don't remember if I talked about this during season 1, but it's so interesting seeing Lauren Holly, the actress who plays Joanne. Is it Joanne or Joanne? I think it's just Joanne. But obviously she's JoJo to Sophia and Nico. But she my first, because I think the earliest thing I ever saw her in was Dumb and Dumber. But I saw that, I probably remembered a little bit from when I was younger, but I still have never seen the entire movie. I want to say she was in Dumb and Dumber, but my first real introduction to her was her on NCIS for the 3 seasons she was on. She was on from 05 to 08, if I remember correctly. And anytime I've ever seen her pop up in other stuff like Leverage or something like that, it's she plays a very interesting. And so for her to kind of play a character where Nico's oh, can we get 5 guys? And she's I'd settle for 1. It's Jesus, calm down, Joanne. She's that was a JoJo joke. It's wow, that's wow. I mean, I don't know why I'm so surprised, but it's just it's just one of those moments where I had to go right, I'm not used to, I'm not saying she's never played characters like this before, but it was my first time seeing her, because I have such a contrast to her playing her. Oh God, I'm blanking on a character's name because it's been so long, but her character in NCIS, because of that, it's kind of hard to shake, because she the characters I've come to know her playing in shows have always been very serious, a little snarky, but have JoJo be kind of who she is, kind of like that black bachelorette, kind of living her best life type of singles life type of situation. She's kind of going on. She's kind of got that bachelorette / party girl thing, kind of, not really, but it's yo, I'm living my best life right now type of swag she's got about her. But yeah, she really pushed both Abby and Lucy to kind of put themselves out there. And sadly, Abby ended up going on a date with a guy. That guy kind of took it in stride, but that's because Abby was beating around the bush, because she's thought he was talking about actually flying planes. He's talking about RC planes that he built, which we never found out what he actually did for a living. So I'm wondering, we're going to find out, was he just talking about a hobby or what it was? But she's oh no, this isn't going to work out or whatever. And she's yikes. I'm curious if that's going to circle back around where she's going to find out, wait, there's actually more to you than that, or was it like that? That's probably like a one and done. But it's like, because the moment she found out about the RC planes, like, oh, it's not even real planes. You're getting all like specific like this, and it's not about you flying actual planes. It's about you flying little RC planes. Okay, I see what time it is. So, but because she was out on that date, she wasn't there when Nico and Sophia snuck out. She thought like, that's what I also think. It's like Nico's like, oh, she didn't even know. It's like, why would she think you would leave? You're the good kid. Sophia's the rebellious one. So Sophia didn't even bother like covering up anything, because now we find out later on she was drunk, so she didn't think about it. Nico, I was like, did you actually check to see if Nico was actually in bed? I was like, that seemed interesting the way he was covered up. I was like, are you sure? I was like, oh, I guess we never focus on it. I guess he's not. I guess he isn't. Oh, nope, he's not. He actually was out. And it was, because both of them like took it bad when they found out. Like, they're already like caught in the middle of like, all right, our parents they're getting divorced, and Nico's kind of come around to it, and Sophia's kind of had her issues with Frank and her being more on Abby's side, but then like walking on an argument and now finding out their mom went on a date, not because she wanted to, because her mom really pushed her to do it. It's like, oh, I already kind of set this up, and it's like, not like anything happened. They had dinner or whatever, and then nothing happened, I mean, once again, I am Team Abby. I am hashtag fuck Frank. Once again, I cannot stress it enough in these reviews. I am super biased in this because I think we're also meant to be inundated more towards Abby, because we see her try and try. She even tried for Frank, and what did he do? Like, he sleazed behind her back. It's like, yo, that makes you even more trash. That like, you slept with Abby, you gave her hope that everything was going in the right direction. She's putting in the time, she's going to counseling, she's going to meetings, she's doing everything right, building kind of her career back up at probation at Svensson. And what did you do? You met with like Felicity behind her back. It's like, so it makes him even scummier in my eyes. And the sad thing is, both of them kind of get the brunt of it, because Sophia went out, got drunk. The moment Abby didn't mention she went on a date, I was like, that's going to come up later on. Frank's going to freak out about that, because she never, when he was like, where were you? She was like, I left her with Joanne. Like, I didn't think anything was going to happen, because the thing is, for like the moment she didn't mention it, because for one, she didn't think it was relevant, but also I guess she was kind of scared. I figured Frank would probably use that against her, which is still a possibility when it comes to like court and stuff. And it's sad, because like, you understand, like, Sophia's young and she needed to, like, she was just feeling the way she is, and she didn't want to feel the way she was feeling anymore. Both her and Nico, that at such a young age, their entire lives are like changing. So like, things were one way and it sucked, but okay. Now things seem like they were going in a better direction, and then just everything fell apart. Nico kind of blamed himself. Sophia blames their dad, and now it's like they're internalizing a lot of that, and it really hits Abby, because for her, it's like, with my drinking issues, because she, not the schmalcoholic, she recognized, no, I'm an alcoholic, and now I'm seeing it in my daughter. What if my vices, my issues, my alcoholism, like, it is, I don't know if it's like necessarily hereditary. I've always treated it in my head like alcoholism can be hereditary. I think maybe like there's a gene that makes you a little more predisposed to it, maybe. But I think it's also like, Sophia and Nico have a dysfunctional childhood just like she did, and it's not exactly the same as like everything between Joanne and Harry and how complicated that was, but it was also there are similarities. So it's not an exact beat for beat, but there are similarities. And especially when Abby told a story to Lucy that no one knows, that she's scared what will happen. Like, she's like, right, she fell for like an older dude, which apparently the kid that party she was hanging out at was like a senior in high school, right? I mean, she's in high school too, but she's like a freshman, I think. So, but either way, Abby, when she was younger, fell for an older dude and got drunk, like, because especially like she snuck out, got drunk, and kind of just like, I think she got drunk off her mom's alcohol, just like Sophia got drunk off of JoJo's alcohol. I think it was kind of that same exact thing. And when Abby was younger and met with this guy, like, they were both drunk, she blacked out, and when she woke up, what's his name, Matt was gone, and the alcohol was gone, and she didn't really remember everything. You're like, Jesus. And for her, it's like, she's like, that's how I lost my virginity. And I never want Sophia to wake up in a situation like that. So when the time comes, Frank goes ballistic the moment he finds out Nico was missing. He's going in on Abby. Then you have Nico calling her a bitch, which Joanne's like, you don't get to call your mom or any woman that. And, Harry jumps down his throat too. Like, don't do that. You don't talk to her. But Frank didn't say anything because it's like, I wonder where Nico got the whole notion of calling a woman a bitch when you're angry at him. Once again, he's angry. It doesn't justify it. Doesn't make it okay. There is that moment where we all say shit we shouldn't say when we get angry. I'm not trying to judge Nico in that. It's like, once again, you're young and you're angry and you're feeling your feelings. And Frank is understandably upset. Once again, it's still hashtag fuck Frank, but understandable. It's like, right, my son was in somewhere, you didn't even know where he was. Sophia came in like drunk and wasted, and he jumps on down her throat, and then like Joanne tried to join him, but he's like, you don't have a leg to stand on. And then he kind of got in Harry's face too, like not even in his face, but jumped down his throat of like, you have no leg to stand on either. Because in his mind, it's like, he knows about both of her parents because Abby's talked about them enough. It's like, I know you guys are, he didn't say it, but it was kind of implying like, you both are failures as parents. You have no judgments upon me. Like, I've made my mistakes. I am not as bad as you because look how twisted and messed, like, it's also a shot at Abby too of like, look how fucked up your daughter is. And that's because of you. So, and now because of how you messed her up, now she's messing up our kids. And it's a nasty situation. The moment they went back and forth at the beginning of the episode, you knew it was going to get nasty. It's about to get even nastier because jumping ahead with Cordelia, like she's saying like, basically Abby's going to be watched by psychiatrists to see if she's actually mentally stable enough to actually look after her children. Like every move, every decision she's made, like she was already kind of obviously the breathalyzer and everything and all the reports. Cause that was the whole thing about Frank, who brought in his lawyer, played by Erica Sarah. I was like, hey, she didn't get nasty in this episode, but the moment it goes to court, you know it's her and Cordelia are going to, because Cordelia was like, oh, if you try to bury us and stuff, I will bury you alongside of us. And you can tell like Abby was kind of conflicted because she's like, right, I want things settled, but I didn't want things to turn nasty like this. But you kind of brought that energy, but Frank would argue, no, you brought that by hiring Cordelia. So it's like, it's just a messy, messy situation. But going back to the Erica Sarah of all, like her character was saying like, we're going to need like more like updates about your sobriety and stuff. And she's like, dude, you already get them enough. Like everything is already kind of here on like the app. In fact, it tells you like you get instant updates. So it's just even more of a power play to kind of swing things more in his favor to kind of restrict her even more. It is a petty situation. And sadly, I feel like you more, I mean, maybe, I don't know what the statistics are. I mean, I know like, I think the statistic, at least in America, I don't know if it's worldwide. Isn't it like 50% of all marriages end in divorce or something? Ain't it something crazy like that? I want to say that's the case, but maybe I'm over exaggerating. Maybe the percentage is more like 40 or 30, because that might be like outdated information, or maybe it's more modern information. I don't know. Like I said, I think that's based in America, but that could be like, I don't know. Which I mean, obviously isn't applicable in this case because this is a Canadian show, but it's set in Canada. But I don't know if that statistic I was throwing out there, like it might have been more worldwide rather than just US specific. But my reasoning for what I was bringing that up for is like, I don't even know what the percentage of divorces, how much are amicable versus like how many get nasty. All you ever hear about are the divorces that get real nasty, but I guess that's maybe because the divorces that are amicable, you don't hear about them. It's like, so that's, maybe that's just the rub of it all, but it's just like, once again, I feel bad for Abby, and I think the show is inundated for us to feel that way because this is about her redemption, showing like, yes, she's kind of an asshole, she's kind of snarky, but we are seeing her do better and be a better person all around, better, like, I think better job at the lawyer situation, being a little more empathetic in a lot more cases. I mean, I think all of this journey, especially working at her dad's firm, is like, helped her grow as a person. She's still herself snarky and yada yada, so on and so forth, but I think it's still like, there's still room to grow, obviously, but she's still made plenty of leaps and bounds since the beginning of this series, so. And obviously that's me focusing on just like Abby's side of things. That's not even focusing on the actual case that Harry takes. There's a friend of his named Fiora, who is, she runs an escort service. Obviously the lawyer Chip was leaning into it. I legitimately felt bad for Fedora because it's like, it's not even Fedora. It was I don't think it was Fedora. I think it was Fedra, right? Like, he went in on her, calling her a gold digger, this and that, constantly referring to her as kind of like, oh, like a prostitute. It's like, there is a distinction, you know, because escorts don't always have to be a sexual thing. It can include it, but it's kind of that's where the girlfriend experience comes from. It's like, yeah, they're just like rich older people who are just like, yeah, not necessarily for sex, I just want companionship. That's where escorts come into play. It's sex work, but it's still being allocated to, like, demeaning any sex work, I think, is, well, wrong in any capacity. Like, oh, you do porn, kind of lump you into a certain category. Oh, you're an escort, lump you into a certain category. You're just lady of the night in a more traditional capacity, put you in a particular category. And that lawyer Chip went in on her in court and just kind of, and because the sad thing is, because her husband died and now it comes to a will situation. His daughter Esme doesn't want her pseudo stepmom to have any of it, because it's like, right, you just manipulated my dad into taking a will. But for her, it's like, I have a lucrative business. I've stayed in the black for the past 10 years. Because even Harry said at one point, it's like, it's one of the older professions. It's probably the most lucrative profession, I would say, out of any. I'm curious how much. You'd assume like tech is, but I'm curious, like, in comparison, like, I'm sure tech probably outbeats it, but I mean, I could be wrong. Because you never realize, like, how much money, like, for example, like, the porn industry makes. So I have no idea, like, sex work in general, all across the board, whether it's just, like I said, traditional prostitution, and not in the sex trafficking prostitution, like, the more, I don't know, prostitution gets in that weird area because there is the more okay-ish prostitution. Not even just talking about escorting, I still kind of treat that as separately, but then, like, prostitution where, like, there's a sex trafficking, like, kind, and then there's, like, the more, like, everything's above board kind. You get what I'm trying to say? I mean, it feels like the more above board kind is escorting, but I don't want to lump all ladies of the night in that same capacity of like, oh, like all ladies who are in prostitution are only doing it because of sex trafficking reasons and stuff, yada yada, so on and so forth, right? Either way, but I feel like sex work, that industry as a whole makes a lot of money. I just don't know if that's like, it is the oldest profession, so I don't know if it is the most lucrative one, or does, like, tech still beat that out? Funny enough, two go kind of hand in hand, especially with, like, the confines of, like, an age of, like, tech, and, how one could kind of influence the other in some capacity. But either way, tangents and all that aside, but even Abby was kind of giving her guff, because she was telling Abby, like, I thought having a woman on my side would be nice, but even I can feel your, like, distrust in me, because I keep thinking, is it Fedra or Fedora? I think it's Fedra, if I'm not mistaken. She and Arthur met while his wife was dying. She was sick, and they were together in, like, her last year alive, and then, like, after her funeral, they moved in, like, together, like, a month later. And so Abby obviously has a disdain for, like, kind of treats her as, like, a gold digger. And then you also add in that she kind of treats her like, obviously she's bringing her own feelings into it as well, because obviously she had to deal with, like, a cheating spouse, especially, like, when your wife is literally laying there dying. So there's that. But Fedra was like, right, nothing really happened until, like, kind of like the end. Like she would, like, Arthur, like, had lost his wife, like, years prior or whatever. It's kind of like the whole point she was making, like, that she had gotten sick. But the lawyer Chip tried to lean in and, like, oh, look at all these expenses. You went to Paris, yada, yada, yada. It's like, oh, you're burning through all this money, all of Arthur's money. It's like, you managed to keep your money. You've kept your business. She's like, I've given it to one of my employees to run, but it's still my business, so I make bank off of it. And I still see certain clients because Arthur was 100% okay with it. And once again, they're trying to demonize her, but then Abby eventually looks into it, and we find out Esme wanted to say like, oh, like I never got in contact with my dad and that's because of you. Turns out her dad actually did try to contact her multiple times, but Esme cut it off because she was so angry about what happened. Understandably, it's like, right, you find out your dad's seeing an escort while your mom is sick and dying, and he has the audacity to bring her to the funeral. Of course, you're going to feel a certain way, and her dad tried to reach out to her, but by the time he died, they weren't on good terms. And so it turns out that originally there was a draft of the will that Esme wasn't going to get anything, but Fedra, she's the one that ended up convincing Arthur to put her into like the will. And it's like, and even the judge, which I don't know if we've seen that judge before. I think we have, because I think I have mentioned the fact is I'm familiar with him from Peacemaker. He's the White Dragon's neighbor in Peacemaker. So I think I have brought that up before because I think that judge has popped up in like season 1 or whatever. But either way, for it is, the judge was like, I get it, like it's understandable the weight you've got to be feeling right now, that because you couldn't kind of move past what you were feeling, you weren't there for your dad in like his final year of his life. You guys didn't make amends. You couldn't be there in that moment for him. And I get that that carries heavy for you, but it turns out all the expenses that they were having remodeling the house was meant to take care of Arthur after he had a stroke. Like she had taken very good care of him in many different ways that even Esme couldn't, because she wasn't in his life. It's like you weren't there. You weren't even aware that he had had a stroke because you had cut all ties to him, because in your mind he was dead to you. And now it is kind of sad. It's like she would never have a chance to kind of get that time back, you know. And it is sad how, and I think that kind of resonates with Abby eventually with everything kind of, because that had happened, like that court case had, like they finished that up after the whole Nico blowing up at his mom and his dad. So it is that situation of, I'm sure a lot of that like really stuck with Abby. That whole notion of, are you going to let your feelings kind of get in the way of kind of what's important type of situation? Because she actually went in on Joanne too, because it's like, you had a job. It's like, oh, like you like slipped off to have drinks with your friends. It's like, no, I asked you to look after my children and you didn't. Like you were, because Abby like is lashing out at her because she's also lashing out at herself because she blames herself for putting him in that situation. But it's also for her, it's like, I am dumb enough to kind of think you do better for your grandchildren. You the one that made a whole point of go out, have a day. I want to hang out with my grandchildren, but they want nothing to do with her. So she's like, yeah, I'm gonna go out and have fun. And it's like, because of that, you know, because for Abby, it's like history repeating itself. You weren't there for me, so of course you wouldn't be here to recognize the signs of like, hey, Sophia's going through something, like, because you didn't notice when I was going through something because of you. So it kind of feels bad. She is trying her best in so many regards, being there for Lucy, being there for Abby, and try to be there for her grandkids, and she kind of gets shit on by both Frank and Abby, so it's a lot. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see where that kind of goes. Some other elements to the story. I love Cecil still being Cecil. That, once again, Jerry was reading the article on like the 40 under 40 that had Daniel on the cover, and basically he was kind of calling his dad out for being like antiquated, and it's like, oh, like this is your young man's game, and I'm going to be the one that kind of changed fencing into the more modern age. And I love Jerry's like, oh, yada, yada, yada. But Cecil kept reading it. And I love that when Jerry walked by, she kind of punches like Cecil, because it's like, you idiot, Cecil. He has no social cues that should tell him like, hey, maybe I should stop, because literally Jerry was reading and then she was like, oh, yeah, yada, yada, yada. It doesn't matter. But yeah. And Harry took offense to that. So he kind of was giving Danny like the cold shoulder. And it kind of turns into this back and forth between them of like, Danny's like need to kind of go up against his dad is because he kind of took what Abby said to heart of like, yeah, why am I going so far above and beyond just to try and get my dad's approval? Like, he'll never see me as an equal or more. I'll always be kind of second fiddle, even that. And so for him, it's like, I want to, like, Harry does feel challenged, and it makes him feel insecure. Like, well, maybe I don't have any more. Maybe Daniel was right. And even Jerry tried to say like, he's like, right, everything I said in that article stuff, I would say to his face too. It was out of context and stuff like that. And Jerry's like, if you can't see what's wrong with that, because it isn't just like, this isn't something you just said to his face. That's one thing. Harry could probably would take that and respect it. The fact is, you put it in a published article that a lot of people are going to read in a published magazine, because now it affects him, the way he looks at potential, how clients potentially will look at him. It kind of shows that, oh, Svensson and Svensson isn't as together, that there's a little division, that, oh, here's the young, like, we should be looking more towards Danny instead of looking towards you, because you're a relic. You're kind of to be relegated to the past soon enough. It's Danny's the future. So, and even later on, Harry went in on Danny of like, right, the fact of the matter is, you should be grateful I even give you this opportunity. You don't get to do any interviews unless I give you the go-ahead, or you can go off and start your own firm, which there's a strong possibility Danny will do that. Turns out the interview they had set up wasn't for Harry. I wonder, was it actually, because they were like, because I think it was the new receptionist, Winston, said, oh, Mr. Svensson. Probably assumed it was for Harry, but it was actually for Daniel. It's probably more likely what that was about. So it's like, and now it's all that situation's about to get so much worse between the two of them. So lines are kind of being drawn. Like Svensson and Svensson is kind of being a that those lines are kind of being drawn, because Daniel didn't have to go as hard as he did against Abby, because he's seeing like, oh, yeah, when Abby's probation's up, what is she going to do? She hadn't really thought that far ahead. She's always wanted to leave, and Harry wanted her to leave, but this whole situation has brought them closer together. But even Abby's like, yeah, but this whole case in this particular episode, you're only doing that just to get back at, like, bringing me onto it, making me like the first chair, and it's just because you didn't want to, it was your way to kind of get back at Danny. I keep calling him Danny just that's what Harry calls him, but Daniel. And so Abby doesn't know what she's going to do, and Harry, I think he is kind of serious about keeping Abby around, because I think in his own way it is nice having all three of his children together. Because Daniel does feel like some kind of insecurities when it comes to Abby, because, yeah, he gets praise, but Abby's the one that gets a lot of praise. And so he went in on about, like, oh, what should I be, one caught vomiting, be on probation and stuff like that, which is so sad that, like, in that argument, like, just to prove, like, oh, you're talking about, like, that I should be more like my sister in that regard. It's like, you didn't have to drag her through the mud. It's like, yeah, you have your tit for tat type of situation, but you see everything your sister's going through, her divorce, everything she's doing to be better, and, you know, for him to kind of drag her through the mud like that, it's like, once again, it's that same argument of like, yeah, the same stuff he'd say to her face, but I don't think he would said all that to her face. But it's like, right, they're both, Abby has her snarkiness, and now like Lucy and Daniel kind of respond in kind to some extent. But aside from that, kind of with the Danny and Lucy situation, kind of tying that together, Lucy made a comment about, because obviously Daniel and Abby kind of knew from the beginning their dad was kind of like, yeah, our dad ain't shit. But Lucy kind of like, yeah, by the time Dad was with my mom, he was a better person. And Abby was like, are you sure about it? Because he was with your mom for 8 years, because, her mom sadly died. I don't know why I brought this up earlier this season. For whatever reason in my head, I kept treating it like Daniel and Lucy had the same mom. They didn't. I don't know why I kept thinking like they did, but they didn't. Because I knew Lucy's mom died. So when they were, when Joanne showed up being like, oh, how's your mom, Daniel? And I was like, wait, I thought his mom was, it's like, right. I don't know. For whatever reason in my head, I for some reason remembered them having the same mom. They don't. Because I know Lucy's mom died when she was young. But it's like, oh, they were together for so long. And it's like, yeah, how do you know he wasn't with someone else? And it wasn't, and it's Lucy started thinking about it, that she remembered there was this memory she had with her mom where they were kind of outside camping, like in the backyard or whatever, and Dad couldn't join because he was working late, but then he got home at like 3 a.m. She heard her mom crying, and her mom trying not to like make it obvious. So it's like, okay, so it does seem like there's something there. And Lucy could ask Harry about it, but it's that thing of if you ask him, she's afraid of what answer she might find. Because out of any of them, she's had a better opinion of Harry. Granted, that opinion has kind of shifted, and like at postseason 1 and stuff. Like, she kind of recognizes like Harry for all his faults, but she definitely has a much more positive opinion of Harry than Daniel or Abby were, because they had a definitely they both have dad issues. We don't know what Daniel's relationship like is with his mom. We know Abby has a very complicated relationship with hers. I actually didn't think about this one during the trial, the case that Abby and Harry were working on. There's an interesting parallel. It's not a 1-to-1, but even Abby's circumstance and Esme in the regards of, right, Esme cut off ties to her dad because she didn't want to like his new life and everything like that with Phaedra. But interestingly enough, Joanne kind of cut off ties between Abby and Harry despite him kind of reaching out. So there is an interesting parallel. I